Hey there, boys and girls. We are finally back with another video on the Super Dukota. The truck is still moving along. In fact, if you're over on the Instagram for the channel, you'll see that I'm actually driving this truck around already. Now, in the last episode, I got my track bar mounts and my steering all mounted up. And so now we're going to go through the process of actually building those components for real rather than just the prototypes you see right now. Now, as we discussed in the last video, I had a little problem with my track bar hitting my oil pan when the axle was fully tucked. I also had some issues with my steering where it would hit the track bar bracket when it was fully turned to the right. And also, if we completely drooped out the passenger side while tucking the driver's side, we ended up maxing out the flex of our drag link tie rod in at the pitman arm, which is not a good thing. The drag link problem can be solved with a couple simple bends. We'd add one bend to clear around the track bar bracket, and then we would add another bend up near the pitman arm to take away some of the angle that joint has to absorb when that drops. Now, there was one big complication with building this drag link, which is that the thread on these Super Duty steering components is a 1" 16. It's a normal thread, but it's not something that a lot of the places like Rough Stuff carry tube adapters for. So what I ended up having to do was take the stock adjuster, cut it in half because that gave me my thread, and weld it onto the end of my drag link. Now, to keep everything straight and aligned through welding, I machined this little insert to go into my 1.5" quarter wall tubing, and then also have a machined area that would center up the half of the double adjuster sleeve that I was needing to reuse. Now, this was a bit overkill, but I do like to have as much structure as I can, especially on steering components, because if anything like that fails, everything becomes very dangerous for you as well as anybody around you. So just to be safe, extra sleeve inside there so that I was able to get weld all the way around it and then also plug weld the sleeve into the tubing for that extra safety factor. Now, I didn't get the bending on camera, but I have my sleeve welded on, the bend here to clear my track bar bracket, and then another bend up here by the pitman arm tie rod end. And then as you can see here, I also use the double adjuster sleeve from Rough Stuff, which is basically just so that in order to adjust the length of this drag link, I don't have to actually remove it. Now, for my track bar clearancing, my main focus was to get clearance under the oil pan so that my track bar didn't hit it, and then also avoid coming down too far too early and hitting my diff cover. However, this was over the weekend, and work is where the 1.5" bending dies are, and I was at home. So rather than waiting a few days, I decided I would do it a slightly different way, and arguably actually a stronger way than bends. So let's get into that right now. So here's a quick mock-up before welding of how this track bar actually gains us any clearance. Obviously, we have a cut in the tube where the clearance needs to happen, around my oil pan in this case. And then basically I take another piece of tube and weld it offset from the original tube. Now, as a rule of thumb, I try to make sure that my overlap between the offset tubes and the original tubes is at least twice the diameter. I don't really have any good reason for that, except for that it just, when you mock it up, that's what seems to feel right and strong enough. So let's get it welded up, and then I can show you how not only is this strong enough, it's actually stronger than if this was a single bent piece of tube. Now that we've offset this tube, the push and pull on our track bar is actually pushing straight along the axis of these tubes. This one gets pushed hard enough, what will end up happening is eventually this tube will fold right here, and this will start to smile at us, which we obviously don't want. So, how are we gonna strengthen up this center piece of tube? It's a great question. Let me show you. One option is to take just a piece of flat bar like this, which is as wide as the ID. So this is 1.5 inch quarter wall tube, which means the ID is 1 inch. So basically you would just take a little bit off this, because it's a little oversized, slide it in through here, so that it's sitting on the inside of this tube, and you'd want to drill some holes here to plug weld it in, and then weld it onto the sides. This is 3/16 inch wide flat bar, and I calculated it out on SolidWorks, and it adds about 6% to the strength, which actually is not as good as I was hoping for. So I don't want to do that. The next option would be to take another tube that has the OD that matches your ID, and then do the same thing. Drill in here for some plug welds, slide this guy in, plug weld it in, and then hit the sides. This would add more like 15% to the total strength of this assembly by adding an extra 1/4 inch of wall thickness, which is what this tubing is. Okay, now the next thing we can do is we can add this guy, which is only 120 wall, nothing huge, but it's 1.75 OD, which means that it's 1.5 inch ID. And now if I take this tube and sleeve even just 3/4 of this one, meaning that it only goes up to the welds here, it doesn't wrap all the way over the top, so I don't lose any of my clearance here. By doing that, we add 33% to the strength of this assembly. It is over double the strength increase from sleeving the inside with another 1/4 inch wall tube. That's just crazy. So that's what we're gonna do. Oh, look how easy that is. Drill some holes. So there you have it. That's how I built this track bar. Now, of course, in the footage you're about to see of me actually flexing this thing, the track bar takes 3 steps back and is literally just tack welded together. Somehow in the last 8 months, I have misplaced the footage of the finished track bar getting cycled through the suspension flex. But either way, everything clears. It's the same flex as you see here. And this track bar and drag link setup is done. That means we can finally move on to getting our coilovers mounted, which is the next step in this build. I promise it will not be a year later. Again, thank you so much for your patience. I know that it is ridiculous how little I'm uploading these videos, but I've been trying to get the truck up and running and driving, and now that that's happening, I can have a lot more time to actually focus on making these videos for you guys. But either way, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.